Hey everybody, Nevin here with Jakobsen, the lead writer at Dead Mage Studios, who is currently working on Children of Morta, which is a roguelite hack and slash about a family of adventurers, right?
Yes, dungeon crawling, procedurally generated, all that good stuff.
So give us like a brief overview of what players can expect from this game.
For sure. So in Children of Morta, you will be essentially protecting Mount Morta. So you're a family of guardians, and essentially the mountain and all the land's been corrupted. And you're going to be climbing up the mountain, figuring out what this black tar that's corrupting everything is, and at the same time you're going to be saving all the gods, because when the gods need help, they turn to the mortals. And the whole time you're playing as a family, so you're going to be developing this family bond and figuring out and like seeing the family evolve and seeing them experience the weight of saving the world on their shoulders as a family. And speaking of just the gameplay, like you're gonna be going into procedurally generated dungeons, killing a whole bunch of bad guys, leveling up, finding sweet new abilities, going back to the house, and then going back into it essentially.
Okay, cool. It sounds like pretty standard but interesting ARPG roguelite going on there. What I find really interesting about this game is the narrative focus that it has on the family itself. How did that come together? Was it always from the get-go going to be, we're going to focus on this family, or were there other renditions where you just focused on one, maybe two characters?
It was actually one of our cornerstones from the very beginning. Very beginning was this was a family-oriented game, or oriented towards a family. I'm trying to remember exactly how it came to be. I think that just was the original, like, hey, what if we had Hyperlight meets Diablo, but a family? Just kind of like that was where we started the game.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. It definitely shows, and it feels consistent in that way. So I see that it supports local multiplayer, and I saw online multiplayer in the menu. How many players is it going to support at once?
It'll support 2-player, and that's both local and online. So we're really excited that we got couch co-op in there, because we missed, like,
it's awesome.
Going back, just to backtrack to your last question, so it was obviously the family was a major thing we wanted to do, but we're remembering the days we played original Gauntlet together with friends, and we wanted to pull some of that old, like, banding together with friends to go, like, save the world kind of feeling. So co-op was really important to us, and so we're glad we got the local and the online co-op into that.
That's really awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of local multiplayer in general. I've got way too many games like that at home. Does the multiplayer tie into the story at all, or is it just to sort of emphasize the connection of the characters?
For sure. So since the emphasis of the story is the family, if you're playing 2 players, you just have 2 family members present. So it's not changing the story at all, because the story is about the family. So you're always going to be experiencing the same story, even though you've got 2 family members present, essentially.
That makes sense. Yeah. So we've established that there is a lot of focus on these characters and on the family. And when I was playing, you were watching, and we got one of those little vignettes. You mentioned that you handle those, you get one of those every time you die, or every time you get sent back to the house. What has it been like coming up with these? Because you obviously have to have a lot of them. So how has that process been?
So just no false advertising. So when you die, you go back to the house, right? And one or two things can happen. Either A, you get one of these special vignettes that you're talking about, which is like a fully fleshed out, narrated cutscene that's just telling, like, it just shows you what the family's up to the entire time that you're out adventuring, because this is a family of people. They're not just waiting for you to play as them. They're living their life and doing their own stuff. The other option when you return is that it actually just goes back into standard, like you go back into control, but at the hub you can see the family doing all their regular stuff while you're doing your upgrading and all that stuff. So you'll see all the characters doing their own activities outside, and you don't lose control of the game. So it's really important that just the ambience of the house gives you the impression that this family is evolving, as well as like changing how they're feeling based on your actions in the dungeons. Like their emotions will actually change, and like the text above their head and like what they're kind of thinking about all evolves based on how well or how not well that you're performing in the game. And so you were asking like how we kind of come up with some of those stuff, and like because it's a lot of content we got to put together, right? Mm-hmm. Spitballing, man.
Good old whiteboard.
Yeah, good old whiteboard, being like, so what if this happened? I guess the best way to go through it is each character we spent a lot of time developing and making sure they had a unique personality. So, for instance, like I've got a sheet of all my characters, and I actually stole this from Guild Wars.
Nice.
They have a narrative mechanic that they are thing they would do that for each race of characters they would say they'd start a sentence like hand that to me, and then they'd leave the rest of the sentence blank. And each race of character would have a distinct way of how they would finish that sentence. And so I kind of stole that whole idea, and I gave each character like their own sentence. So like John the father, he'd be like, hand that to me, I want to protect it. Lucy would say, hand that to me, I want to see if it burns, because she's like a child, she's always curious. And then, so each character's got their own personality built based off of just this one sentence. And so then what we do from there is that we then like put each character into like a weird situation, just kind of see how we think they would react, and that's how we kind of start building those custom cinematics that you see when you return home.
Awesome. That's really awesome insight into that way of developing a character. Are there other ways that we can learn about them as we play the game or between adventures in the dungeon?
Yeah, for sure. So each character writes a set amount of journal entries each chapter that occasionally just like pop up in the library, so you can go check those out and read it in your own time while you're at the house. Some of them you can find in the dungeon. There's plenty of like little lore snippets that you can also find to just kind of like experience the world a bit more. So yeah, we really wanted to make sure that like not only does the gameplay and the art tell a story, if you want to dive that much further, we also have these journal entries that are extremely personalized for each character, to the point where like you can see Lucy, the fire child over there, she's the youngest daughter. All her journal entries are going to be written as if an 11-year-old wrote them.
Do you have an actual 11-year-old on staff writing them?
I do have an 11-year-old sister, so I have plenty of inspiration on how to pull the proper lingo out.
Awesome. It's definitely good to have those sorts of connections in the industry.
It's all about having the little siblings, right?
Last question, and then I will set you free among packs. Procedurally generated games are everywhere. I think I've talked to quite a few of them in the past hour. What is Children of Morta doing to set itself apart from the ocean of proc-gen games? Are there any special systems you guys use, or are you just relying on being awesome?
I mean, awesome is just, at the end of the day, it's what we're doing. I guess the best way to look at it is a lot of procedurally generated games try to create this limitless amount of content, where the idea is that you could play it for infinity hours, right? And so the game design is built around mechanics that you'll be infinitely repeating. So what we take advantage of the procedurally generated dungeons not to necessarily create infinite content, but to create just a refreshing take each time you go through the dungeons, because with the roguelite elements kind of mixed in, you're going to be going through the same area, same caves a lot, but we didn't want it to be the exact same layout each time. So we're more so, instead of using procedural generation as the focus, it's more assisting the core game design, which is kind of what we wanted to focus on. And yeah, I mean, it's currently paused back there, but
yeah, people keep looking over can I play the game?
Yeah, if you want to play, all right, cool. Go for it, man. But yeah, so we have this great merging of math and art coming together to create these procedurally generated levels, because it's all random. You'll never see the same thing twice.
That's awesome, and I'm even more excited for this than I was when I first walked up like a doofus. Thank you so much for your time. This has been great. If people want to find out more about Children of Morta, follow development, follow you, or anything like that, where can they go?
I mean, the easiest way is you can follow us on Twitter. You can either follow Children of Morta. It's just at Children of Morta. You can follow the developer, which is Dead Mage. That's just at Dead Mage. And then you can also follow our publisher, which is 11-bit, at 11-bit Publishing.
Okay, awesome. Thanks again for your time. Have a good PAX.
Thank you so much, Ben.